Our dear colleagues, Sarah Cameron and Andy Bruno were our comrades in this undertaking. And we're most grateful to Maya's family, her parents, Dr. Kira Peterson and Dr. Mark Peterson, and her partner, Dr. Marm Kilpatrick, for being with us today and for sharing documents and photos to prepare today's event. Before we proceed, let me make two announcements to know. Please keep your microphones off when you're not speaking. So everybody can hear well, and the sound is good for our recording. And that is my second announcement, that we are recording this event. So without further ado, let me pass the baton to my colleague Kelly O'Neill. Kelly.
Thanks, Nargis. Hello, everyone. We're really, really thrilled that you could be here, whether you are a member of Maya's family, someone who you continue to count her among your friends, colleagues, whether you were her teacher or her student, or maybe you knew her through her scholarship. Today, we're here today together for all the right reasons and all of the wrong reasons at the same time, right? The wrong reasons have to do with tragedy and loss, but the right reasons have to do with the fact that Maya was with us, right? And she had an incredible thirst for knowledge and love of adventure and sense of joy that she brought to all of us. I just want to echo Nargis in thanking Maya's family for sharing so graciously so many remembrances and photos. It's really made the weeks leading up to this event very deep and very meaningful to me. So I'm personally very grateful. So we're very happy to have this event at Harvard. I apologize. Harvard isn't the very first place that Maya came to know Central Asia or even to study Russian. And we owe a huge debt of gratitude to her wonderful professors at Swarthmore College, in particular, who set her along the path and brought her here. She came here in 2003 as a student in the master's program in regional studies, and that's when I met her, when she was young and fresh in the scholarly world. She stayed to do her PhD in history, working with Terry Martin, who is with us today. And I served as a member on her dissertation committee, along with Mark Elliott, who is also here. And I think we were all just thrilled to be able to witness the process of her producing a really amazing dissertation. And all of that was just one part of the journey that brought us Pipe Dreams, the book that Maya published. And in many ways, we're here today to think about the book, about how it came to be, how Maya produced it over the course of years, about her experience of research and coming to know a place and coming to know a history. We're here to think about what that book means for the fields of environmental history and Russian and Soviet history. And we're here to begin the work of thinking about how it will shape those histories moving forward. This is only one of many events that either have happened or are in the process of happening on several continents, in person, virtually, and in print. And we are really happy to be just one event among many. And I would like to introduce Andy Bruno, who's going to kind of bring our attention to a couple of the bigger things that are happening to celebrate Maya and her work. Andy is associate professor of history at Northern Illinois University and a friend of Maya.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Nargis, for hosting this event. Thanks, of course, also to the Davis Center more broadly, and Harvard more broadly, and Swarthmore more broadly, and everyone. And of course, thank you so much to Maya's family, for such generous and supportive engagement with us throughout this process of sort of honoring and celebrating Maya's life. Thanks. I want to thank also Sarah for helping Sarah Cameron for sort of helping bring me into these efforts that, this summer we were so shocked when it happened. We were sort of, been assuming to be in contact with Maya soon about some sort of project, one way or another, and then just it hit us very suddenly. And it's been nice to be able to come back and think about ways to celebrate and honor her. And of course, thanks probably most of all to Maya herself for just having such a sort of profound impact on sort of my thinking, all of our thinking about the world, and sort of model of how to sort of embrace and love life and intellectually thinking. And so that's actually what the main thing I want to talk about right now. I'm going to share my screen for a second because I just want to talk about two brief things. There's other initiatives in terms of funding stuff through Swarthmore, through UC Santa Cruz. I might try to put some of that information in the chat a little bit later. But right now, I just want to talk about two things. One, which is the creation of the dissertation research, the Maya K. Peterson Dissertation Research Grant in Environmental Studies through the ASSIS, the Association for Slavic East European and Eurasian Studies, it has been approved and is in the process of sort of being created. We are already at the point now where we will be able to offer this next year. This is a $6,000 research grant for a student to conduct international research on something in the environmental studies of our area. It has been made possible with the extraordinarily generosity of Maya's family, who have guaranteed to be able to endow this grant. It's also already benefited from the generosity of at least 60 individuals who've made donations in Maya's honor to the organization for the Maya K. Peterson Dissertation Research Grant. And I would, if you're so moved, encourage you to also make even just a small donation. I mean, bigger donation the better, but even a small donation is something that will sort of help honor her legacy and just sort of make our esteem sort of clear. Here's the web address. I'm going to post this on the chat after I'm done speaking, and then here's the website as well, just what it looks like. Yeah, I'll put that all in the chat. And then the second thing I want to talk about is if you do not yet have your very own copy of Pipe Dreams, Water and Empire in Central Asia's Aral Sea Basin, Cambridge University Press has provided us a discount code. It's PIDR capitals 2022, and it gives you a 20% discount off of the paperback version. Now, I've published a book with Cambridge. Some of you know their hardbacks are not necessarily the most competitively priced. The paperbacks are reasonably priced. So with your 20% discount code, you can acquire Pipe Dreams for about $26, which is a steal. And I will also put this in the web address where you can find it from Cambridge's site. You can add it to the cart, and then you'll enter the discount code to get that. So as this event is largely about honoring Maya's intellectual legacy on us all. So if you haven't yet procured a copy, I would encourage you to do so. With that, I will stop and hand it over back to Kelly and Nargis, and I'll put all this information in the chat. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, so we have arranged a series of speakers to share their reflections on all of this, and they are roughly organized in some sort of chronological order, as you would expect of an event run by historians. I can't. So the first, we're going to kind of trace
no, just sit down.
Maya's intellectual development over the next few minutes. And the first speaker who has agreed to be with us today is Carolyn Roeder, who is, and I'm going to keep introductions really brief. You should just assume that everyone here has done amazing and remarkable things, right? And should be celebrated in their own right. But Carolyn manages an incredible project at the Freie Universität Berlin, and she is a holder of a PhD in history that she earned side by side with Maya. And so, Carolyn, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm going to share my screen with you. And can you hear me? And sorry, I was not.
Yes, you're fine.
I don't know why. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry about that. I'm slightly overwhelmed, and I'm so grateful to talk to so many of you about my memories with Maya. And thank you so much for inviting me and for putting this together. I wished we could do this in person, but I'm also grateful that this way I can actually join from afar. And Maya and I had been friends since around 2013 when I was in my second year at Harvard. And we came close because of her ingenious idea about boosting our work efficiency by getting up early in the morning and meet at 3069 for a work session. And Maya had very strict rules. You were allowed to get up, brush your teeth, put clothing on, nothing else, and show up at 8 o'clock. And then we had 15 to 20 minutes where we were allowed to gossip, maybe complain about Terry's high expectations or so on. And then after 20 minutes, all the talk about the cute guy at the counter stopped, and we had to work for 45 minutes. And then we often ran around across the Charles. And then finally we're allowed to shower and then start our days off. And by 11 o'clock, we had worked and talked and worked out as well. And so that year we became really close, but Maya was much more than just a grad student friend. I would say she was really my adventure buddy. As many of you know, I've spent most of my time at Harvard thinking and writing about how mountains shape friendships and people. So I thought it only fitting that I would bring you some memories that I made with Maya in high places. We shared more mountains together than I think we have shared chapters. And we shared both friends in the historians community, but also really beyond that. And Maya became friends with many of my climbing friends. And that was just an incredible time to have her part of so many groups of different friends really across the globe. And Maya and we traveled under the headline Madame Caroline's Budget Adventure Tours. That was a title she came up with, and she was playing on a story I told her about a student who would call me Madame Caroline in class. And she was also playing with the fact that my idea of budget traveling entailed at least one design hotel in a larger city together with tenting. So she kind of made fun of my attempts to really travel on a shoestring, and we never really did. And sometimes she thought, I think I spent too much money on the trips I organized for us. So there are really no memories, memories like Jamaican mountains are very special. And one amazing trip we did together was in 2013 with a friend of mine from Ljubljana, Samo, when we climbed Mount Triglav, the highest top of Slovenia. And for many years, I wanted to do that. And it was amazing to have her going alongside. And we broke at least 2 records on that trip. So first of all, we selected the hottest day of the year for our approach. And we made it to the top on the 2nd day in the morning and thought we would be able to descend the very day down to the valley. But we also, I think, broke the record of being the slowest party, at least in that year. I can't verify that, but we did actually not make it back because our little historian's legs were just way too weak for and not up to the pace. So we had to sleep over in a hut again, with the problem of we were broke, and also Maya's plane was leaving in the morning. So we had to choose, either we eat and sleep inside the hut, or we sleep inside the hut and we don't eat. That wasn't really an option for us. So our friend Samuel managed to convince the lady in the hut to give us a discount. And I went up to some random Germans in the corner and asked them, begged them for money, and they gave us their last cash. And in the meantime, I called my mom to get in touch with Indira. And I told her, Mom, Maya's mom is waiting for a sign from Maya the next day. So you have to write to Indira, here's your email. Please introduce yourself and say you're the mother of that other girl on top of the mountain, and her daughter will come down, but it will be a day later. And also, here's the bank account of some random people. Please wire them 20 euros. I just asked them for the last cash. So we made it back happily the next day. It took us 3 days. When my friend Samo, who might be here today in the audience as well, does the same trip, he needs, I think, 6 to 8 hours. So another record set, but we were really proud of us pushing through those 3 days and having conquered this mountain, about which I actually also wrote a lot in my research. So this was really a fantastic trip, and Maya is always smiling from beginning to the end, regardless of how tired she was, whether she missed her train or not. She was just always an amazing sport. Mm-hmm. And because that worked so well, we decided to just go on an even bigger adventure together with Samuel. So he was not yet fed up with us slow historians. And the next year, we went to Georgia together. And as many of you know, going to Georgia with Maya goes to Georgia like other people go to the mall. So, you know, you would show up in Tbilisi, she knows her way around. We had at least 2 people, friends in town where we'd have lunch with, so no big deal at all. And once we left Tbilisi and went to the mountains, we had hired a guide, again, a budget decision of mine. The real adventures began. And the first night in the tent, a thunderstorm broke loose. And I woke up when the thunder was just and lightning right above our tents. And I woke up and I looked into her face because she woke up, of course, as well. And I was hoping to see in her eyes some kind of usual Maya smiling, this is fun, everything will be okay. And it was not. She was scared to death. I was scared to death. We realized this was not okay. We started throwing out everything we had metal outside, our ice axes and so on. And we just sat through the storm, hoping that we will survive. And we did back then. But that kind of experience in a tent is actually something very special for climbers. And I would briefly like to read something written by another Harvard graduate and a friend who passed away this year, David Roberts. And he wrote about the experience in the tent. An expedition then is in a sense an experiment in Rousseauian primitivism. In a sogging sleeping bag in a drooping tent on the 4th straight storm day, a certain naive instinctual self comes to the force. This is quintessentially the place to hold forth for hours about favorite desserts, unfavorite people, objects of long hidden lust on whom one hopes to perform the following unmentionable acts. But such storm-sitting banter belongs only to one's tent mates. It is of such stuff that trust and the peculiar intimacy of climbing are built, and it depends on being private. Well, I can tell you maybe we did talk about favorite desserts, not about the rest, because we were nerds, and what we did during the storm was using our iPhone apps to learn the Georgian alphabet. I guess that, you know, I think that is something we can share freely, but for sure it was a very special experience. And when the climbing started the next day, the adventure, of course, didn't stop. We started late, the snow was wet, rockfall was abundant, our guide's equipment was very dubious. So we actually didn't make it to the mountain and top, but what we found halfway up the mountain was a dog where we had no idea where he came from. It was very far from any settlement. But we named the dog Georgie. We fed him an energy bar and then rappelled with him back to the base camp and took him back to the village where he didn't belong, but we hope that he found someone. And even years after, we were always thinking of Georgie the dog and thought maybe we should have brought him back to the States. So yet another incredible adventure for the three of us. And when Samu went further to do some more climbing without two of us, and we went back to Tbilisi, we realized once again that climbing isn't really an adventure compared to driving in Georgia. And I would like to share a memory, and it's actually a little video. So just a disclaimer, if you're not ready to see that, but I would invite you to share with me this memory that I have on tape of this incredible woman who in every situation just always had, kept her smile. I will check that my sound, check computer sound. Hear the sound.
Yes, we are in a river. Say something about our situation.
Well, we are in a tunnel to keep out of the hail. We might drown in a few minutes, but at least the car will be safe, undamaged. So that's probably a good thing, right?
Oh, this is another car. La 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 la.
So that was really Maya. We were stuck in a tunnel, hail all around, and she would just smile, crack a joke, and be like, remember that one time I was in Azerbaijan, then this and this happened. This is nothing, compared to that. So it was always amazing to travel with her. And of course, we shared so many friends and other adventures in the Sierra. And to wrap up, I would like to share a little poem that I wrote briefly after she passed away. And that I think really came from my heart because I know it will be always in the mountains where I will remember her. When thunder roars above the tent and my eyes are filled with fright, when wildflowers bloom and thirsty mosquitoes bite, when I see alpine lakes chill each fiber of my body and the peaks of the Sierra call in all their glory, I will think of you, my adventurous friend. You departed too early, so much more was there to explore. But for what we've seen and done and laughed about, I will always remain grateful for. I promise to the mountains that we will celebrate your name and offer beer to the spirits of the peaks as long as we will remain. We did already so high above Lake Tahoe, a place you feared could be lost before it was your and my time to go. But mountain time is not our time, and there is solace in that thought. My beautiful friend, I will see you down the road. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. We'll move to our next speaker, Terry Martin, who is technically the George Baker Professor of Russian Studies, but we think of him as Professor of History in the History Department here at Harvard, and he had the pleasure of advising Maya during her time in the PhD program. Terry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kelly. My condolences to Maya's parents and her husband for their loss. As said, I worked with Maya from the fall of 2004 to the spring of 2011 as her advisor. And I wanted to say something about Maya as a very young scholar, since many of you knew her later in her life. So I looked for our email correspondence, but it has disappeared into the ether. And I opened a Word file which had my recommendations that I wrote for Maya over the years. And the first page was a recommendation that I wrote for only 2 months after I met her, which was for admissions to PhD programs in history. And I didn't know how to write long recommendations yet, so it's actually rather succinct, and I think it provides a little snapshot of Maya as an emerging 24-year-old scholar. So as one historian remembering another, I suppose it's fitting to read a primary source. So here it is. November 29th, 2004. Maya Peterson is the most promising PhD candidate that I have recommended. Of the 12 PhD students whose committees I have chaired or sat on in my 7 years at Harvard, I would estimate Maya's potential as equivalent to the top 2. Maya is currently a second-year student in Harvard's 2-year master's program in Russia Area Studies. She graduated from Swarthmore with a 3.9 GPA and high honors. She is fluent in Russian and German and is currently learning Uzbek. She has engaged in several independent research projects, including an oral history of survivors of the Leningrad blockade, a study of Russian-German immigrants in Berlin, and an analysis of the environmental movement in Central Asia. This is at age 24. In addition to history, Maya has a strong background in sociology and anthropology. In short, at age 24, she already has solid research experience, excellent language skills, and a demonstrated interest in a broad range of topics and academic disciplines. Since I was on academic leave last year, I first met Maya this September, when she enrolled in my PhD seminar in Soviet history. She has thus far completed 7 written assignments, roughly 5 to 8 pages. Most of my students who take this course flee from history rather than join it, and has received straight A's, the only such student in the course. Her work has been better than the 2 PhD students in the course. Indeed, it has been better than the work of any of the PhD students who have taken it in the past. She is currently researching a seminar paper on social and friendship networks in the 1930s, again, a completely new topic for her. I had forgotten about this part of her unpublished work. Making use of judicial and control archives, the Harvard Interview Project, as well as published memoirs and diaries. I expect an outstanding paper. In addition to her written work and class participation in my seminar, I have had several long conversations with Maya. These were about entering the profession of history, that have reinforced my sense that she is extremely bright and has an attractive intellectual breadth and independence. She has my highest recommendation. Sincerely, Terry Martin. The next 7 years, during which Maya wrote the dissertation that eventually became Pipe Dreams, showed that my letter contained no exaggeration. In fact, it missed Maya's beautiful prose style that led me to often recommend that she write a book for the popular audience, as well as her tenacious and adventurous researching skills. As an advisor, I made no contribution to Pipe Dreams, except that I sensibly did not get in Maya's way. She always worked with an attractive intellectual breadth and independence. This past week, I reread Pipe Dreams with pleasure and sadness. I wish I could look forward to reading her next book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. Our next speaker will bring us to another part of Maya's life. Helmut Trüssler is the head of research at the Deutsche Museum. He's also a professor of modern history and history of technology at the Ludwig-Maximilian-Universität. And most importantly, for our purposes today, I think he is jointly the director of the Rachel Carson Center for Environment and Society, where Maya spent some really important time. Helmut, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here for this event to celebrate Maya. On behalf of the Rachel Carson Center, I think I'm speaking here not just for myself, but for many, many people, a large network of fellows, of staff members, of colleagues all over the globe. And Many of them are actually with us today. So what I will be doing in the next couple of minutes, I will, in a sense, quote some of the fellows of Maya when she was at the Carson Center. She spent all in all 9 months in 2012, 2013 at the center. And we have heard from many people that the Carson Center meant a lot to Maya when she was in Munich and had this network and got in touch with so many people. But Maya also meant a lot to the Carson Center. You will hear about her connections to very many people and the lasting impact she has had on the Carson Center and will continue to have in these voices, the original voices that I will be quoting. And then in my second part, I will also, in a sense, mobilize my own fond memories of multiple encounters with Mayas all over the globe, actually. So I'd like to share also a few images. I hope I find them. Can you see them?
Not yet.
Not yet?
No.
Sorry. Kelly, do you have them with? Doesn't work.
You have them, yes. Let me just.
Wonderful. Maybe you can share it with us. Okay, I'm starting with to quote Nicole Seymour, who is with us. Actually, she quote herself. Nicole is Associate Professor of Literature at the California State University, Fullerton. Here now you hear Nicole, who is the lady in red on the left-hand side. As you can see here, there is a visit of the Oktoberfest, the famous Oktoberfest in Munich, and Maya participated in that and other Oktoberfests. Now I'm quoting, I had never lived abroad before July 2013 when I moved from Southern California to Munich, Germany to spend a year at the Rachel Carson Center. Maya Peterson became my fast friend, and how lucky I was. She was vivacious and adventurous and also happened to speak excellent German. Over the next several months, she would shepherd me through my first Oktoberfest, take me to the doctor when I had the first hints of what later turned out to be appendicitis, and introduced me to the many quaint customs of Munich, like Feuerzangenbowle. Well, this is not a Munich custom, but anyway, it's a German custom. It goes without saying that Maya was also a brilliant scholar and generous colleague. My time at the Carson Center was life-changing professionally as well as personally, and Maya was central to that experience. I am so glad that so many people from so many different parts of the globe also had the pleasure to knowing Maya. Maybe the next slide that is also of another visit of the Oktoberfest, and now I'm quoting Amy Hay, who is also with us today, Professor of History at the University of Texas Pan American. There's a brief quote. I had the pleasure to going to the Oktoberfest with Maya, who looked fabulous in Dirndl, and you can testify to this, as you can see. It's a happy, now of course, bittersweet memory. Maya lit up a room and showed no tolerance for BS. She filled her life with experience and people. She lived an authentic life. Let's go to the next image, and I'm now quoting Louis Warren, who is also with us. Louis, who is Torrentine Jackson Professor of Western US History at the University of California, Davis. Maya was a superb and accomplished scholar. This much is obvious. What's less obvious, perhaps, is the sense of fun and adventure and her compassion for her colleagues and friends. She was always looking for ways to enjoy and celebrate the friends she had, and she was always open to new people and new friendships too. I, Louis, I knew Maya at the Carson Center, but also here in California, because she taught over at UC Santa Cruz. and I used to visit her there. At the Carsten Center, she spent time not only with staff and fellows, but also with other friends she met in Munich, including many Germans and Americans who were not academics, but whom she met as an avid hiker and cyclist or just as a resident of the city. Her cycles in Santa Cruz were similarly diverse and overlapping. A Venn diagram of Maya's friendships would look like an abstract painting of myriad cycles, all touching at Maya. In Munich, I often ran into her in beer gardens again and parks without people who were not at the Carsten, with people who were not at the Carsten Center at all, but just their neighbors, her neighbors and her acquaintances from one or another place. She was fun and outgoing, and she drew people like the sun. How I miss her. And another person who will miss her very much is Anka Lippold, who is also with us. Anka, maybe her closest friend. You see her on this image on my right-hand side. Anka is now Innovation Dialogue Manager at the German National Academy of Engineering, of which I'm a member. Maya was a scrupulous scholar who took her own research very seriously and did not shy away from challenging tasks like tracking down original sources in dusty organized archives in various countries. She regularly participating in the Rachel Carson Center's reading classes. Maya was a social and open-hearted person who treated everyone at the Carson Center with the same respect and kindness. From interns at the front desk to senior fellows she shared the office space with. In her various days at the Carson Center, she was able to build up a wide professional network and became friends with staff members, visiting scholars and fellows alike. Even though Maya was selective about who she shared personal memories with, she was always the life of the party with her infectious laughter. One of her favorite events in Munich was the Oktoberfest again. In general, Maya was a very athletic and adventurous person. We have seen that. She loved exploring other cultures and whenever possible tried to combine academic trips with personal adventures. For example, in Morocco or Istanbul. Maya loved hiking and running and even agreed to run the Munich Marathon, maybe the next slide then, with me in 2013. Maya became a finisher in this event. I think I also participated. And as you can see here, there is a young supporter of Maya and Anka. Okay, I'm switching gears now to quote another close friend of Maya, Ruth Morgan, Director of the Center for Environmental History at the National Australian University. Maya was a force of nature, a sparkling smile across the conference room, always a friendly face wherever we crossed paths in the world, from Munich to Tucson. I looked up to Maya, finding in her own work and practice the qualities of a bright, innovative, and generous scholar, and a leading person in the field of water history and environmental history. She had so much to do, so far to go. I hope her close friends and family know how much we treasure her memory. I couldn't agree more. And then Ellen Arnold, Associate Professor of History at Ohio Wesleyan University. Yeah, wonderful, that fits. The last time I saw Maya, when we met for a water history retreat in Yosemite. I have a picture from that. We don't have it with us today, but these are also talkative images, I think. I have a picture from that trip that I think really captures her energy. Maya was a dynamic, warm, and open to adventure and to new things, ideas, and people. She enveloped people with her energetic embrace of life. And finally, a quote from Giacomo Parinello, maybe the next one. Do we have another one? No, maybe we stick with this one. Giacomo Parinello, who is Professor of Environmental History at Sciences Po Paris. I have a very fond memory of Maya, her sweet smile and smart talk. I recall very well a June afternoon in Delft, Netherlands in 2015, sitting with her and Chris Patore in front of a beer and chatting about life and research. It was one of these simple, unremarkable moments that somehow stay with us for the rest of your life. I had invited her for a special issue on water no more than 2 weeks before her tragic loss. It breaks my heart to know that I will never get a reply. And yes, on this picture you can see Maya on the right-hand side and as well as on the left-hand side. You can see Maya embracing some of her best friends and colleagues when she participated in the European Society for Environmental History biannual meeting in August 2013, which we had in Munich, which we hosted. And it was a big meeting with about 600 participants. We invited all the back then fellows and alumni of the Carson Center, maybe 120 or so, shipped them to the Lake Chiemsee for a conference excursion. And here is an image on the left-hand side from this excursion. Maya gave a wonderful talk at the conference, and she was in the middle of everywhere, in the middle of every event, I should say. She was so present, as always, very present with her energy, as we've heard. And I may announce that the next biannual meeting of the European Society of Environmental History will take place next year in Bristol. And there will be another celebration on behalf of Maya. And this will be organized by my co-director, Christoph Mauch and Julia Obertreis. And hopefully many of you can participate either physically or digitally in this event as well. Maybe the next slide then, my brief recollection of memories of Maya start, of course, with her talk at our so-called lunchtime colloquium, where she lectured on July 5, 2012, on technologies of rule, empire, water, and the modernization of Central Asia, 1867 to 1941. And I was one in the rooms who had hardly any knowledge on she was lecturing beforehand. Afterwards, I had so much knowledge. And, meanwhile, I think I have listened to about 350 of these lunchtime colloquia, but this one will really stay in my mind. You got a lot out of that talk. It sucks up your energy, in listening to the talk, but then you get something in revenge. The next slide maybe is also the last one, yes. Some of the participants of that conference are in the room also. I noticed Tom Seller, the person here. Maya, you can see Maya here, right behind Ren Min's university's president. It was a conference at Beijing, at Renmin University Beijing, held in May 2015. And here you can see me, you can see Paul Josephson, a close friend of Maya, Tim LeCain, another close friend of Maya, Ho Shen, one of the co-organizers, Donald Worcester, Grand Seigneur of Environmental History, the same holds true for Ed Russell. So a very prominent breach of scholars that gathered here in Beijing to discuss an issue that is was very much in the interest of all of us, but also particularly of Maya. How landscapes have been transformed by human people, that what we call the Anthropocene. And Maya very much contributed to this conference, not just with her talk, but with all her interventions, during the conference, actively participating in the discussions, enriching this conference from her specific knowledge on Central Asia. She was such an asset to that conference, and she will continue to be an asset to many people at the Rachel Carson Center, to many people in our gathering today. Just I could have seen Matt Buchet with us, Seth Peabody, Viswanathan Srinivasan, Bron Taylor, Katja Pruish, just mention a few. They all can testify to what I just said. Maya will continue to be a wonderful asset to the Rachel Carson Center. We admire her to the limit. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hamid. Our next speaker is Botakos Kazembekova. She is a research fellow at the University of Basel, Switzerland, and a historian of the Soviet Union, who has also published extensively on Soviet rule in Tajikistan. Bota, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this event. I'm very honored to be here today and to share my ideas about Meyer's scholarship. Unfortunately, I did not know Maya that very well, but I will start with a personal note, and then I will talk about her book, and I will try to explain why one should read this book. And as a person from Central Asia whose past she is describing, I will also talk about what it means for me as a Central Asian, her scholarship. So I lived in Tajikistan from 2005 till 2011, and I spent 5 years in archives. And for the most time, I was alone there. So I was very happy when somebody came, because most of the time I was lonely, and sometimes it was very boring and the work was very slow. But I wasn't there in summer. So once I came from my summer vacation, the lead archivist told me, "Oh, Bota, you missed Maya. Maya was here." And yes, of course, I was sad that I missed a person who also actually flew to Tajikistan and, was in this, working in this reading room. But from the tone of the archivist, I understood that, wow, that was something special. And plus, around 2008, 9, 10, it was very difficult to get into archives in Tajikistan. The access to foreigners was very restricted, but Maya was able to get into the archives, which really surprised me as well so quickly, because I knew scholars from the West who were waiting for archival access for around 8 months. So, and Maya did that. So, but later I met Maya in Moscow and I knew why how she got, and this is what everyone saw on the images and everyone heard about it, is I think Maya's character, her charms and her smile simply melted this bureaucracy. And I'm sure that it's exactly how she is, you want to be with her, you want to be around her. And so I think she's one of those rare people who got into the archive so quickly, so easily. And but in Moscow, I'm a historian of violence. So from morning till evening, I was reading materials that caused nightmares at night. But when I met Maya and we sat near each other in the Garspi in Moscow, one of the very, very nice and really heart-melting things that we started doing, first of all, I'm a bit shy in big, huge archival reading rooms, but Maya was smiling and she was so open and so welcoming, so warm that, I don't know, it's kind of naturally you started talking to her. And we decided to sit near each other and we started exchanging these little notes, which data or which delas, which files we think one should read with it, one should read. So we were writing it down, and I really liked her very neat Russian. Her Russian, it was amazing. So because I was living in the world of violence, Stalinism, for so many years, this little human touch and this kindness really lightened up my days in the archive. So yeah, so this is kind of my personal, quite short, unfortunately, knowledge of Maya as a person. But I think her character, her personality really influenced how she reads history and how she wrote her book. I think that her love for nature and her advocate of nature really made her read the files that she was looking in the archives differently. And I think it's her book is exceptional because she's an advocate of life in its entirety, not only certain groups of people. And talking about her book, Pipe Dreams, I think, is more than a study of irrigation, as its title suggests, water and empire. It is a story, because we have a lot of non-historians who probably did not read the book. I will just also think that I need to just to say basically the plot. Maya writes about how in Central Asia, which is a region south of Russia, how that arid region, which has, which had the biggest lake, or Aral Sea, the sea or lake. Well, it is called a sea, but it is actually a lake, and rivers. How kind of imperial, what she calls intentional actors, administrators, engineers, try to divert rivers to irrigate the lands for growing, for example, cotton. And cotton was kind of a product that imperial governments in Russia and then in the Soviet Union tried to grow in Central Asia, turning the region into a kind of monoculture region, and to make profit and to control that region. So I myself come from Central Asia, and I grew up between two rivers in Central Asia. And my family experienced several catastrophes that Maya is also kind of writing about. So, for example, the whole family of my grandmother, except herself, and she just by luck survived hunger in Kazakhstan, is also part of that history. And Sarah Cameron wrote a brilliant book about that story. In the 1990s, my family, we constantly had refugees in our house. So first, refugees that my family hosted were the Aral Sea refugees, environmental refugees. Then we had also refugees from Tajikistan from the civil war. But I remember when meeting refugees from the Aral Sea, it was very difficult for me to understand how water left and people left. And I remember talking to them how they were absolutely lost. And I think Maya's book really shows that in Central Asia, water is not simply part of infrastructure, how something that it was in Europe and Russia, where rivers were simply understood as means for transportation. In Central Asia, water is blood, water is bloodline. Water constructed not only livelihoods, but political regimes and cultures, rituals. Maya also goes into poetry. She finds water everywhere. So water in Central Asia is more than water in other parts of the world, and I think Maya shows it excellently. So I will look first at kind of three main points that I think are very novel for the field of Soviet Central Asia, and that I think is very crucial for us to understand that region. And I think she does an excellent job, coming up with this kind of new lenses to read the region. First, Maya's book is an important history of science in imperial context and its limits. Well, secondly, it is equally a remarkable labor history. Maya's descriptions of labor practices in irrigation constructions are absolutely captivating. Thirdly, it is a book about nature. And here, nature is not simply an agent that influenced how different actors acted, but also how nature was destroyed because of the belief in scientific competency and because of disrespect of nature. So Maya describes nature and takes you on her exploration of nature. And here I was struck because, I am a native of Central Asia, and I actually lived in most parts of Central Asia. And I traveled a lot, and I climbed mountains, and it took me, and I actually also went to Afghanistan to look at the kind of old practices of irrigation and to see how they differ from the practice of irrigation in Tajikistan. And it took me a long time to understand it. And Maya understood it very, very quickly. And it really struck me because while reading it, I was thinking, wow, you really have to be an observer of nature and lover of nature to be able to understand that. And I think that is a big asset of the book. So she's not simply a historian of people, and she's not a historian of cultures and political systems or governments. She is, first of all, a historian of nature and an observer of nature. So reading history through nature, nature as its essence of life, both human and non-human, allows Maya to go beyond human constructs, human self-presentation, and importantly for me, propaganda. Nature for Maya, and I think this is a very strong argument in the book, carries a different truth. So I think that Maya transported brilliantly that kind of that argument, that insight. Her book for me was a fresh air in the field because I think it really lends her a more sober approach to humans, reading it through nature. Because I think when we do read history only through human narratives, sometimes, I mean, they are diverse and we just look at this diversity, but if we really look at history through nature, we become skeptical about a lot. And I think this is something that we need, especially in Soviet history. So Maya is empathetic about the natural world, and one can, sense her admiration for it. And I think that it allowed her to come to an important conclusion. And when I read it, I immediately knew that this will be an important book in the field. And I will just quote her. Maya writes, this book argues that from an environmental perspective, early Soviet Central Asia remained a colony of the Soviet Union in spite of Soviet campaigns to modernize the region and stamp out backwardness. The Central Asian borderland region was developed as a source of raw materials for the Soviet state, and Soviet authorities exploited Central Asians' human labor resources with this goal in mind. For many, probably it will not be anything special, but for me as a historian of the Soviet past, this is a very brave argument because there is a lot of kind of thinking of modernity and science and, positive side of modernity. And Maya simply did not buy that narrative. And I think this is because she understands life differently. However, it's not about only nature. She's not simply reifying kind of the non-human world. She understands perfectly that nature exists in interaction with people. Nature provides livelihood, but the destruction of nature leads to destruction of people and these livelihoods and cultures. So people in Maya's book are not simply, the self-conscious, rational actors who can dominate nature, but people in Maya's book are part of nature. And I think this is something that that is very contemporary. This is something that we always need to keep in mind, and showing how that was always the case for the case of the 19th and 20th century. Is a very powerful thing. Although Maya writes that she deals with intentional actors, administrators, engineers who try, to irrigate and the deserts and steppes in Central Asia, we do read a lot about Central Asian actors. We're learning about work conditions of common canal diggers, migrants, colonists. But there is also another category of people, and these are residents of Central Asia generally, for whom the appropriation of nature turned into nightmares. And here I quote Maya, for those who today still inhabit the toxic sandscapes where the Aral Sea used to be. So the whole book is about people who wanted to transform the region for its appropriation with a distant metropole in mind. But Maya never forgets to read the story from a local perspective, even while telling a story of how external imperial actors transformed nature. She always found creative ways to find and notice local realities and people. So even if, she describes how water management and water was distributed in colonial administrators' paths for expansion for military and trade, she also effectively shows how water was part and essence of local economies, of local communities, of local cultures, and yes, you have to read the book to understand how she picks this information from sources that actually are not supposed to tell you that. And and Maya tells us often, since cultures in Central Asia very often were oral cultures, especially when dealing with water management, she still goes and looks at evidences. She really goes and finds these evidences to feel local cultures. And this is amazing. I think this is a great scholarly achievement. Another aspect of the book is that it is a story of disappearance, of water and health for the sake of control over peoples and lands. Political transformation was a material and bodily reality and marked not only the earth, the planet, the environment, but also its inhabitants who have been left in dust. And I really love that very empathetic, very humanist language. Maya effectively shows that imperial story is not story about the others. It is just as a story about oneself. And Maya, I think, even with sense of humor and with that smile, I think shows how that self-understanding was quite distorted because the image of the others was also distorted. So she's kind of actually going after the colonial administrators and saying, well, I think you think too much about yourself and you fail simply because your pictures are distorted. And I think she constructs a very complicated picture of these distortions. And so it is for me a history of science, because she says that, well, in many of the cases, science was a history of distortions. And science was about ignorance. And science was about misunderstanding and lack of understanding. And that is why, for me, it is the book is about, science, imperial science, and how much it is a pretense to science rather than, like she's actually shaking this kind of classical understanding of science. She asks, in a way, what is actually science? And she shows that to measure, classify for the purposes of control is doomed to fail because it is always intentional. So once knowledge is intentional, it is based only on one party's understanding of oneself and one's understanding of the world, and can never fully capture another reality without experience of that place and of that life. And without representing, that experience, it is never objective. And because science is permitted with power, we have to rethink our understanding of scientific modernity. At the same time, it is very interesting how this kind of understanding of control and measurement permitted government structures. And for the Soviet case, she shows, again, very empathetically. And because she has this lens, I think she's able to see how, and I quote here, she writes, men became the machines for the Soviet government, and human labor became a substitute for time and technology alike. The ends were always more important than the means. So here, I think, Maya is very critical about how, from one side, science is a pretense, but at the same time, once the king is what is that? Naked. You have to still pretend that there is science. So you transform people, and you make a situation as if people were part of science, but in reality, they were simply their bodies as used as robots. And at the same time, it's a sad story where imperial science is always at the limits of failure, and overcoming of that failure led to bloody situation of repressions, of violence. So there is a lot more to Maya's book. I really loved how, for example, she shows that imperial histories sometimes are simply a biography of a royal family. How it is sometimes a history of certain people who think that they are the center of the world. At the same time, you'll be very surprised about a lot of humanness in human interaction. You will find that people very often overcame inequalities and violent structures. And I think it is kind of Maya very empathetic nature that really picked up. And I think she was so excited about these moments of humanness, and she put them in the book and gives us hope at the end while reading that very tragic and very violent story, giving us hope. And I think this is an absolutely wonderful contribution. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Bota. Our next speaker, as you can see, we've kind of moved into, close to the present moment. And our next speaker is Jennifer Durr. She's the Associate Professor of History and the founding director of the Center for Middle East and North Africa at University of California, Santa Cruz. So she had the privilege of being a close colleague of Maya. Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And I want to, before I start, just really thank the Davis Center for hosting this event today. It's been quite wonderful to be in the presence of Maya this morning, and also to the other speakers. It's been so just needed to laugh and to think and to be in that space. So as Kelly said, my name is Jennifer Durr, and I am a member of the history department at UC Santa Cruz. This was the department in which Maya taught, and Maya and I, along with Mark Matera, were all hired in 2012 as a kind of incoming class of historians. And we very much experienced our life at Santa Cruz with the three of us as an experience of togetherness, both intellectually and professionally, but also socially. And this morning, I would like to spend just a few minutes reflecting on who Maya was to me as a colleague, as an intellectual interlocutor, and also as a very close friend. Maya and I worked together on many occasions, outside of the context of UC Santa Cruz. Not only did we enter the department at the same moment, but our scholarship, broadly construed, engaged questions of empire and water and their relationship to environmental history in different parts of the world. So Maya's work was obviously situated in Russia and Central Asia, and my own work in the Middle East and North Africa. It was through Maya that I regularly began to attend the annual meeting of the American Society for Environmental History. Indeed, we always shared a room at this conference. And it was in these circles that I first began to collaborate with her. And I want to say that, you know, oftentimes in our discussions of scholars, we focus much on intellectual kind of genius and what it means to be an individual scholar. I also want to emphasize that scholarship is a collaborative process and one that requires close relationships with others. And in these respects, Maya was an ideal collaborator. She relished the opportunity to think broadly and also to explore new facets of her work. And she engaged in this exploration with a kind of wisdom and sharpness, but also with a total lack of ego. She was among the most generous interlocutors whom I've had the opportunity to work. Maya and I organized 2 different panels together. The first was in 2015 at the American Society for Environmental History, and we organized a panel entitled Thinking About the Future and the Past, Hydraulic Engineers and Visions of Environmental Transformation. Our second panel was in Europe at the European Society for Environmental History, which happened in 2017 in Zagreb, Croatia. This panel, which we organized, dealt broadly with questions of capitalist imaginaries of the body, and it was particularly memorable. It was July and it was sweltering. It was one of those European summers that people insist never happens, and you know now that it happens every year. Our panel was the first of the conference. It was in the mid-afternoon and it was deeply lacking in air conditioning. Originally a panel of 4, 2 of the panelists were forced to withdraw at the last minute, leaving only Maya and I in this room with 4 what felt like very long papers to present. Present we did, dripping, for what felt to be a 9-hour panel. And yet in the midst of what was, I'm convinced, the longest panel in all of human history, Maya was just as Maya was. She performed brilliantly and with clarity and wit. And while a hot panel is just a hot panel, on this particular day, the attributes that carried her through much more arduous conditions were on full display. Maya had an ability to confront difficult situations with honesty, with grit, and with polish. And I really loved that video that Carolyn showed of the car and the rainstorm and just her laugh and her attitude. Maya was my colleague, but she was also my very close friend. Her quiet confidence, her steadfastness in the face of challenge, and let it be said, her passion for great adventure. I loved her dearly for these things. Most recently, Maya and I collaborated on an application for a Mellon Sawyer seminar on the theme of race, empire, and the environments of biomedicine. I found out a week after Maya died that our application had been successful. Now, today we're here to think about what Maya did in the past and specifically her book, Pipe Dreams. But I would also like to gesture to the future and to how Maya was considering her intellectual trajectory as it moved forward. The Sawyer Seminar, which will happen next year, will interrogate the intersections among race, empire, and the environment, and also their significance in the theory, practice, and structure of biomedicine within the broader geographies of American empire. Maya and I were both interested in thinking more critically about the influence of Cold War politics on the history of medicine. The seminar will also build from the notion that not only has race functioned as a determinant of environmental exposures, but it has been a central component of the environmental imaginaries that undergird the theory and practice of medicine and also the provision of care. Now, I would be remiss if I did not point out that for Maya, The seminar was both intellectual and personal. Its more personal facets molded by her experiences of, and also reflections on, the emergent geographies of fire in California, and in particular, the flames that had engulfed Santa Cruz in August of 2020. Whew, I'm gonna try to make it through this. At UC Santa Cruz and within our community, the intelligence, the sharp wit, and the devotion that infused Maya's scholarship were also defining traits of her pedagogy. After arriving at Santa Cruz in 2012, she inspired undergraduates with innovative and wide-ranging courses that covered more than 1,000 years of world history. So for those of you that teach history outside of Europe and the US, you recognize that the craft of the historian is chronologically broad, and Maya confronted that chronological breadth with vigor and with inspiration. She mentored a number of undergraduates as they wrote theses and seminar papers, and these pieces of work garnered campus-wide awards and prizes under Maya's mentorship. Her dealings with graduate students, and I noticed that her graduate student, Andre, is here today, combined kindness and intellectual rigor, and students responded to both, their work coming into its own under her guidance. You know, finally, as I think really became clear in our conversation about the Rachel Carson Center, Maya was particularly welcoming to new faculty, helping to introduce and integrate them into the intellectual and social life of our campus and our community. Among her friends and colleagues, and many of Maya's colleagues were also her close friends, Maya was trusted and admired for her kindness, her candor, and also her wisdom. She was beloved for her generosity. She had a kind of legendary openness, and also, and especially important to me, an irreverent sense of humor. So for me personally, in my years at Santa Cruz, Maya was a port in the storm in a world of academia that still often works against women and certainly does not abide by the practices of feminist scholarship. She was also a deeply kindred spirit with whom to devour the world and the wisdom that it could offer. And, you know, I just appreciated so much that there was no adventure that Maya would turn down or say no to, or even react like it was a crazy idea. In her approach to research, Maya insisted on the significance of language study, of deep time, of travel, and of scholarship that took time, effort, and careful attention. I keep returning to a particular memory as, you know, I was thinking about what I wanted to say today. So when we were in Zagreb, there's a museum in Zagreb called the Museum of Broken Relationships. And I visited this museum with Maya and also her best friend, Anka, who is also here today. This museum functioned as a kind of odd touchstone in a conference as everybody visited it, and then later on had kind of oddly revealing and open conversations about the memories and the thoughts that the Museum of Broken Relationships inspired. In the short days after Maya's death, I tried to imagine that I would submit some sort of exhibit about our broken relationship, about our friendship. And, you know, as I've moved forward, I've realized that this thought is inconceivable because her memory is too big for me. It's too difficult to distill to only one thing. And it is my deep hope, and I think a hope that has come to fruition, that this bigness in Maya, this is what will continue to linger in our many worlds. So thank you so much for having us today and for hosting this event.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We have one last formal speaker who will offer some comments, and then we'll have a closing remark too from Maya's family. So just so that you know, what remains for us. So our final speaker is Sarah Cameron. She is Associate Professor of History at the University of Maryland. And the floor is yours, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'd like to first begin by expressing my deepest condolences to Maya's family and friends, to Mark and Indira Peterson, Maya's parents, and Marm Kilpatrick, Maya's partner. It's been an honor to get to know you these past few months as we've worked on, together with my colleague Andy Bruno, we've worked on an important initiative, a fellowship in Maya's name through the Association for the Advancement of Slavic, East European, and Eurasian Studies that would support the environmental studies of the region. And also, I want to express my condolences to all of Maya's other friends and family who I have not met, who are here today. Maya's untimely passing is an enormous and unfathomable loss. Even today, I find it extremely difficult to even comprehend. And I just want to say at the outset, we stand with you and we mourn with you the loss of this incredible person. There's a lot that has been said and much more that could be said about Maya as a person. Her generosity of spirit, her joy for life, and her wonderful love for adventure. And if I had more time, I could elaborate in detail on all of these subjects. But I do want to make sure that Maya's scholarship and its deep and lasting contributions are very well represented in this forum. And as I speak, I think it will become clear how the personal and the intellectual are intertwined. Many of the same qualities that made Maya such a special person also informed her scholarship. I had the privilege of knowing Maya as a peer, a colleague, and as a friend. Indeed, when I was working on my PhD dissertation, which focused on the history of Soviet Central Asia, the very first person I met outside of my home university was Maya. I was so intrigued and blown away by the boldness of her research, her willingness to take an intellectual framework, environmental history, which has been relatively underutilized in the Russian and Soviet field, and apply it to a really vast and understudied area, Central Asia. And I got to know Maya better as I encountered her at research, her and her research at conferences and during our time together as fellows at the Rachel Carson Center. Over the years, both Maya and her research became kind of like a yardstick for me, something to aspire to and measure myself against. I envied her gift for mentoring. I noticed that whenever I encountered graduate students or junior scholars at conferences, usually without fail, the very first question they asked me was, "Do you know Maya Peterson?" And I do not think that this is a coincidence. Rather, I think it speaks to her remarkable gift to connect with people. She had a knack for putting people at ease and a distaste for pretension and hierarchies. And she was easily able to instill her love for history and for research in others. Maya's research too influenced my research and the field more broadly in ways that I'm still working to understand. The environmental studies of Central Asia, this is an area that was really not well covered prior to Maya's book, and it's now booming. It's not an exaggeration, I believe, to say that all of these developments can be traced in some way to Maya's book. So I'm going to speak today about Maya's book, Pipe Dreams, which was published by Cambridge University Press in 2019 and which was released this year in paperback. I'm also going to touch upon some of the projects that she was working on at the time of her death. One is an article-length comparison of interbasin water transfer schemes in the Soviet Union and the United States. The other is a book-length project examining how fermented mare's milk, Kulmos, this is a good produced by the nomads in the steppes of Eurasia, how this became a popular therapeutic substance in the Russian and Soviet space as well as beyond. And an article related to that project is forthcoming in Slavic Review. Rather than discussing each of these projects in depth, I want to really highlight collectively how they've made extremely important contributions, lasting contributions to the field of environmental history, as well as Russian and Soviet history. There are many, many contributions I could discuss, but in the interest of time, I have 10 minutes for my remarks. I'm going to limit myself to 3. The first contribution I'd like to highlight, and that is something that I've already hinted at, is that Maya really opened up Central Asia as an area for environmental historians to explore. In general, the history of Central Asia is very understudied, and to date, social and political history have been the predominant approaches. But Maya's approach was really very fresh. She had the foresight to realize that historically there's a very close connection between the strategies of, between the landscape of Central Asia and the strategies of the people who live there. This is in large part because a lot of the region is very arid, very prone to drought, and environmental history, which scrutinizes the changing relationship between humans and the natural world. This is an absolutely essential lens through which to understand the history of the region. This approach is realized in all kinds of very thoughtful ways in Maya's path-breaking book, Pipe Dreams. The book offers us the first detailed history of Russian and Soviet water management efforts across Central Asia from the 1880s to the 1940s. Rather than relying exclusively on political categories, Maya calls our attention to the ways that geographic or environmental categories also shaped the history of this region and its people. As she states in the introduction to the book, the physical environment of Central Asia is not merely a setting for her narrative. Rather, water is what she calls, quote, the book's guiding principle. And the book's chapters follow the flow of Central Asia's rivers as they wind their way downstream from the mountains of Central Asia to the lowlands. Similarly, very cleverly, Maya does not pitch the book as the history of a specific Central Asian republic or country. Rather, if you look closely and carefully at the subtitle of her book, it is a history of Central Asia's Aral Sea Basin. This is a geographic category. It's a vast geographic area that encompasses a lot of what we think of as a former Soviet Central Asia. Maya's pioneering environmental approach informs not only the history of Russian and Soviet Central Asia, but also the history of the field of global environmental history more broadly. Issues like desertification and the history of arid regions, they have attracted a lot of scholarly interest in recent years, in part because climate change and water use are, of course, such pressing contemporary issues today. But I would argue that this body of scholarship has really paid insufficient attention to the Russian and Soviet example. Maya's research points out just how much they miss. She illustrates the ways that Russian and Soviet ideas about water management in arid lands were part of a larger global conversation and also shaped global trends. The second contribution of Maya's research that I'd like to highlight is her insistence on comparison. The underlying notion that the Soviet Union is totally unique, a kind of self-contained state that cannot be compared to others, still can be found very frequently in the literature. And arguably, this type of thinking has at times been a bit stifling to intellectual exchange and scholarship on the region. But in both her book, Pipe Dreams, and in her work in progress on Hummus fermented mare's milk, Maya takes us across the 1917 divide. She helps us understand some of the commonalities and differences between Russian imperial and Soviet rule. Her planned article on interbasin water transfer schemes in the Soviet Union and the United States was also similarly very inventive. Water diversion is sometimes presented as something uniquely Soviet, kind of a desperate strategy that the Soviets had to take to repair the environmental damage that they had caused to the shrinking Aral Sea. But Maya's research reminds us that states around the globe use such water diversion strategies. Taken as a whole, her work has done much to dismantle entrenched notions of Russian and Soviet uniqueness. The third and final contribution that I want to highlight today is Maya's very inventive use of sources. In her research, Maya was really an incredible detective. Her book, Pipe Dreams, is based upon research in 5 different countries: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. You get add United States to the list, and then you get 6. Archives in these former Soviet places are very challenging to access and to use. And it's really a great testament to her skill as a researcher that she was able to produce such a bold and ambitious book. Maya's new book project on fermented mare's milk takes Maya into new intellectual terrain, including the history of food and the history of medicine and public health. But Maya had the vision to see that this wonderfully inventive topic was not purely a Russian or Soviet story, that it also extended to places like the United States and even to Mongolia. Indeed, I saw from Maya's CV that she had received funding to conduct research in Mongolia for this project. And my immediate thought upon seeing this was, gosh, how much I really, really would have loved to read this book. You can also find this same intellectual curiosity in some of Maya's earliest published works. In preparation to speak to you today, I looked at an article, US to USSR, American Experts, Irrigation and Cotton in Soviet Central Asia 1929 to 1932, that Maya published in the journal Environmental History in 2016. The article is based in part upon an inventive array of sources, the papers of American water engineers who traveled to Central Asia in the 1930s. These sources allow Maya to demonstrate the ways that the history of Central Asia is often thought of, this very isolated region cut off from the world. That's this sort of stereotype about Central Asia, but she effectively dismantles it and shows the ways that it was very much intertwined with other world regions, including the United States. This article also, and these sources also allow her to tackle the issue of race, a topic that the field of Soviet history has now only really begun to turn to in earnest and struggles to address. Throughout, Maya's work is characterized by this type of fresh thinking and forward-thinking mentality, I would argue. It's a quality that I aspire to and can only hope to emulate. More generally, her writing is infused with a kind of joy. She manages to communicate the clear pleasure and delight that she took in chasing down a story. We must deeply regret her passing, but we can also treasure the many contributions that she made to the field of Russian and Soviet environmental history in her all too short career. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you so much. So I think we have this incredibly deep and textured sense of what it was to know Maya, maybe a little bit of a sense of what it was to be Maya and what it is to encounter her work. And I thank all of you very deeply for what you've shared. At this point, I want to invite Maya's family. Her mother has agreed to speak to us for a moment and share her perspective. And I do, Indira, I do have the slide that you had asked me. Would you like me to bring that up now?
Yes, and then you could, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Very good. Then you can take it away because
okay.
There's only one slide, right? Yes.
Yes, just one. Yep. Just click the right buttons here.
And after I speak about that topic, you can take it away.
Okay.
Thank you. I hope I have the strength to get through these words. It has helped very much that you have made us smile and laugh through our never-ending tears. We, Maya's family, her parents, Mark and Indira Peterson, and her life partner, Mom Kilpatrick, we are deeply moved by this gathering in memory of our beloved daughter and partner. We are honored to be here with you today. Thank you, Nargis Casanova and Kelly O'Neill of the Davis Center and Professors Sarah Cameron and Andy Bruno for organizing this event and inviting us to participate in it. Our hearts are broken. We are still reeling from the shock of Maya's sudden death in the prime of life. We are wordless with grief. We cannot be consoled. And yet, as strangely as we face our unfathomable loss, we are heartened to know that so many others share our grief, to know how much Maya is loved and missed, not only by her family, but by her social and intellectual communities, and how many wonderful people around the world our Maya's luminous yet all too short life has touched. It is also comforting to share some personal words about our bright star and her beautiful spirit. We, her parents, are grateful that we were graced with her presence for the bulk of our own adult lives, that she gave us so much joy, and that she packed more into her 41 years than most people would in 80. Mom and Maya spent 5 wonderful years together. Numb with grief, not long after Maya's passing, Mark and I searched wildly for some way to memorialize her presence in our own neighborhood. To our joy, we found a bench in a small garden overlooking a lake on Mount Holyoke College on the campus, a childhood haunt of hers. This is because Mark and I taught at that college. We walk and sit on that bench every day. Please come and visit. The plaque on the bench will say very soon, Maya Peterson, scholar, teacher, lover of nature, citizen of the world. You can take the slide away now. All of you have spoken eloquently about Maya's brilliant scholarship and intellectual spirit. You have illuminated her passion for the study of history, for dialogue between the humanities and the sciences, and for innovative scholarship across disciplines, passions that she has shared so generously with all of you, with her students and her peers. Let me say a little bit. You captured her joy, but you also, again, made us laugh and smile through our tears. So I'm thankful for that, for all our movements. Let me say a little bit about her as the person we all knew as a citizen of the world. First, you have heard and seen there were travel and adventure. As a child, Maya memorized the names of the countries on the globe. As a girl and a grown-up, she traveled all over the world, from Europe and India to the remotest areas in Russia, Central Asia, and China, sometimes with us, sometimes on her own, but mostly, as you know, with her friends. Not for nothing did she choose the labels Maya World and Maya Fly for her Facebook pages. At any given moment, you never could tell where in the world our Maya was, but you could be sure that it was an exciting, interesting place and that she was exploring it with the liveliest curiosity and delight. Then there was the unbounded love. Maya loved her family and friends and people and cultures in all their diversity. She loved her name Maya. It means magic and enchantment. It means the great goddess in Sanskrit, but she loved it because it is found in so many other languages, including the one she chose to study, Russian. We cherish Maya for her pure and unstinting love and vast kindness that all of you have talked about. Her joy in life, the joy she brought to us. The Maya you knew is the Maya that we know. Ego has no place, had no place in Maya's makeup. She was all about team playing and collaboration, sometimes in the extreme sense. Did you know that she played rugby, women's rugby at Swarthmore College and was thrown up in the air? I suppose it doesn't surprise anybody. Maya had time for each and every one of us the parents, as well as all of you. Marcy McCullough, her friend, dear friend from Swarthmore College, put it best. Maya was beautiful, both inside and out. She always made you feel good about yourself and life in general when you were around her. And then there was adventure, often extreme adventure in nature. I think it suffices to say, Maya left no mountain unclimbed, no ocean or river unexplored, and many of you have been her partners in these adventures. But I want to talk about Santa Cruz, the Rachel Carson Center, Mom Kilpatrick, and Hawaii. All the aspects of Maya's spirits and passions came together in joyous and exciting ways in the last 10 years of her life. The University of California, Santa Cruz, the Carson Center in Munich, and Hawaii became Maya's spiritual and intellectual homes in these last 10 years through these wonderful circles of friends who share her passion for history, nature, science, and the world. It was in these circles in Santa Cruz that she met Mom Kilpatrick, who is a professor of ecology and evolutionary biology at UCSC. In Mom, Maya found the love of her life as well as her dearest partner in love of nature and adventure. Mom and Maya's life together was a symphony of grace, joy, and harmony. They worked and played together with friends, swam in oceans, hiked the length and breadth of California, climbed mountains everywhere, explored the wilderness and the wonders of the animal world. They danced, cooked, planted trees, served the community, lived simply and beautifully, marveled at life in all its variety. Theirs was a partnership of equals, bound by love, sheer joy, and intellectual companionship. In April 2021, excited about welcoming their baby into the world, Mom and Maya spent a week with Mark and myself and with the Kilpatrick family on the Big Island, Hawaii. We celebrated Maya's 41st birthday and Mom and Maya's ceremony of union on the beach. I sang a verse from Kalidasa's Sanskrit drama Shakuntala, where Shakuntala's women companions ask the blessing of the plants and trees for the departing bride. And I chanted the beautiful words of the Upanishad, asking them, Mom and Maya, to walk together and talk together all their lives. That week, we, mothers and women friends, blessed Maya with a flower mandala and bracelets in a ceremony for pregnant women. We swam in the ocean, glorying in sightings of fish and marine life. Dolphins swam alongside Mom and Maya. Maya was radiant, the picture of health. We were supremely happy. In Hawaii, we had gone to paradise. Alas, as you know, our beloved Maya died on June 16th in 2021 in Santa Cruz, California, from a very rare catastrophic complication of childbirth. Maya and Mom's beautiful baby, our granddaughter Priya Luna, beloved moon in Sanskrit and Latin, followed her in death the next day. The light and joy have left our lives, and we will carry this vast sadness within us all our lives. But we also know that Maya's spirit and her legacy will live on, as you've shown. We are grateful to all of you who have come forward to keep her flame burning bright, and to all the institutions that have established memorial funds in her honor: South Hadley High School, Swarthmore College, her alma mater, the University of California at Santa Cruz, and ACES. These funds will help scholars and peers to continue the dialogues in which Maya so delighted, and enable future generations of students to travel and to pursue the study of history, especially environmental history. Maya grew up in the Connecticut River Valley. At her naming ceremony, in the Hindu naming ceremony, we invoked the blessings of the Ganga as well as the Connecticut River. No wonder she chose to explore the Volga and the Rhine, the Isar and the Murghab. Mark and I scattered some of Maya and Priya's ashes in Stony Brook, a brook that joins the Connecticut, accompanied by the ancient Sanskrit hymn to the waters. Mom scattered his portion in the Pacific, off the seamount where he and Maya swam. We shall not say farewell to Maya. She will live forever in our hearts and minds. We shall feel her eternal presence in the earth and the waters she loved so much. Dearest Maya, you ever shall flow and shall ever be. We say with Rilke, as he said to Orpheus, wenn dich das Irdische vergaß, zu der stillen Erde sag, ich rinne. Zu dem raschen Wasser sprich, ich bin. And if the earthly no longer knows your name, whisper to the silent earth, I am flowing. To the flashing waters, say, I am.
We are so grateful to all of you for sharing and for being here today. We do have so much more to say and more to give to each other. I think there is a slideshow that I'm going to put on in the background here. I invite you all to stay if you would like and have a look. I will leave the floor open. We're over the 11 o'clock hour. Please, if you would like to stay for a few minutes and share a comment or a remembrance, you are very welcome to do so. We know that you may have to leave, and that is fine too. We hope you'll enjoy looking at a few more views of Maya at various important moments in her life, just as a way to kind of take in all of the beautiful and important things that have been said here today. So